Yes, we are on a slippery slope, and democracy is under siege.
The majority of Americans believe that crime in major American cities is a significant problem that spikes in particular among black voters and swing voters.
Is American democracy in greater danger than ever before? Are Trump's latest threats about the enemy within straight out of the fascism playbook? Let's put those questions to our panelists. Joining me on Global Pulse tonight is Raymond Vickery. He's a former Democratic member of the Virginia House of Delegates and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Also joining us from Washington, D.C. is Don Ritter. He's former Republican member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And completing the panel tonight is Nick Weinstein. He is principal and pollster, joining us also from the US Capitol. Gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. Raymond Vickery, let me begin with you. The question that I want to ask you is this, that while for a long time, Americans have expressed concern about whether democracy under Donald Trump is under threat, now when the US president, during his address to the top generals of the country, uses phrases like the enemy within and the war from within, America under invasion from within, and suggests that Democrat-run cities be used as training grounds for the military. Many are asking, it's not just me tonight, but many are asking, is this downright fascism on display under Donald Trump? Is America on a very slippery slope? What's your take?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think that your question really answers itself. Yes, we are on a slippery slope, and democracy is under siege. It's not just the speeches which were done were yesterday at the Pentagon, advocating from the president the use of military force throughout this country to attack the enemy within. It's not just the Secretary of Defense calling himself the Secretary of War and attacking diversity and social justice as being, instead of a force multiplier, something that weakens the United States, but it's across the board. The attacks have been going on ever since January to any opponent of the president, whether they be in the courts, in the media, in higher education, across the board. This has been happening. So the question is no longer, are we on the road to dictatorship? The question is, what should happen now? And in that regard, it seems to me imperative that the other great democracies of the world, India, Japan, Western Europe, step up to really reverse the tables, if you will, on years of criticism by the United States and try to help us over here in spreading the word that this is not in accordance with the principles which have kept this country great for 250 years, namely freedom of the individual, freedom of thought, all those freedoms which are in our First Amendment, freedom of the press, assembly. All of those are under attack. So it's not a question of whether this is occurring. It is occurring. And the question further, and I'm sure we'll want to discuss it with your other guests, is what happens now and how do you turn the tide to preserve what has been fundamental of the United States, namely leading the charge for democracy around the world.
Is America still the leader of the free world? I think that is really a question that many around the world are asking today with a great degree of skepticism as well as concern over the developments that we are witnessing unfold right before our eyes. Don Ritter, let me come to you now. Fact is that the Trump administration in recent months has gone after pro-Palestine protesters at universities across the United States. In recent weeks, we've seen the Trump administration go after comedians and late night show hosts like Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, excuse me, because Trump did not like the jokes that they made about him. But now things seem to be getting far more sinister, serious, maybe even out of hand. I want to ask you this. Yes, you're a Republican, but you're also a proud American who I'm very sure cares deeply about his hard fought democracy. After all, America has been a beacon of democracy to the rest of the world. Today, when you hear the US president use dangerous and divisive terms such as the war within, the enemy from within, and using the US military against his opponents and dictators in Democrat run cities, are you not worried that these are clear and unmistakable signs of fascism on display in the United States of America under Donald Trump? Is he not playing a very dangerous game of trying to amass absolute power by pitting Americans against Americans?
Well, thank you also for having me. And your question is so loaded that he is a fascist and he is destroying the social order in America. But you have to understand that America's a divided country, and there is a great battle between the kind of conservative element within this country and the liberal, between the right and the left. Now, Trump's rhetoric may be sometimes over the top, but he has never disobeyed a court order. When you talk about Palestinian protesters, I mean, they wreaked havoc on our campuses. And getting a visa, Frank, is not a right. It is a privilege, as the Secretary of State has said. And clamping down against these horrific anti-Semitic disruptive protests on our campuses is actually quite appreciated by the American public. Now, when he addresses the generals and he talks about the enemy within, he has something very specific in mind. It's not the Democrat Party or the wiping out of freedom of speech and harassing comedians. He's talking about the massive crime that exists in our major cities. He is talking about an invasion of 8 to 12 million people over 4 years of the disastrous Biden administration. And he is talking about a criminal activity and quelling it. And when Pritzker, the audio went bad, but I've listened to him, and that man is denying what's really happening. This is Gavin Newsom showing up here. All right. Gavin Newsom is a highly partisan, ultra-left Democrat who has wrought havoc on his own state of California. He is the last person people like me or people with a relatively conservative bent will be listening to. Pritzker is a joke when it comes to the crime in Chicago. He's denying that exists. Its murder rate is off the charts. It may be down from last year, but big deal. So if you look at what happened in Washington, D.C., and I'll close with this, the National Guard came in, it started patrolling the streets, and Washington, D.C., and Muriel Bowser, the mayor, has admitted, has never been more calm and safer in recent history. So the record of Trump on all of these things, and don't forget that in the summer of 1920, it was the liberals, the left, the Democrats, Antifa that virtually burned down America and causing multi-billion dollars in damages and death and destruction. And that can't happen again. So there is the flip side to the story And I think be careful when you take Trump's rhetoric literally. I think you have to take it seriously, but not literally. Hitler was a fascist. Mussolini was a fascist. Francisco Franco was a fascist. Trump is a hardcore conservative with a unique way of speaking.
Okay. Nick Weinstein, let me come to you. You've heard the other two panelists. Don Ritter says, yes, Trump's rhetoric can be shrill, but don't take it literally or at face value. Fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is talking about unleashing the US military not on a foreign enemy, but on Americans, on his own people. Don Ritter insists this has nothing to do with wiping out free speech or targeting Democrat-run cities, even though we know which cities Donald Trump has named. The question I want to ask you is, while there is no doubt that America is a deeply divided and polarized country and society today, perhaps more than ever before, how are Americans in general, let's say going by the latest polls, really looking at some of these Trump utterances? Because I know that in many quarters, these have set alarm bells ringing, with many saying that this is straight out of the fascism playbook and nothing but a march towards authoritarianism. Don Ritter disagrees. But how do you think a vast majority of Americans are looking at it today?
Well, I have to agree largely with Congressman Ritter and his comments. Signal, the firm that I work for, does a survey of all Americans every month. And last month, we asked these very questions of voters. How do they feel about, the deployment of the National Guard into American cities and the problem of crime in these major American cities? And the reality is, a vast majority of Americans believe that crime in major American cities is a significant problem that spikes in particular among Black voters and swing voters. And the idea that, sending our fellow countrymen who are members of the National Guard into American cities is some form of fascism is, I think, really disingenuous and characteristic of the, supercharged rhetoric that we've seen from folks on the left. President Trump sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. over a month ago. The impact has been lower crime. You see National Guardsmen, walking a beat, talking to members of the community, helping clean up the community, and calling the police when they see crime. It's not been a, jackbooted fascist takeover of Washington, D.C. If anything, they have helped make the city safer. And the idea that, Governor Pritzker or Governor Newsom would, lecture us on, fascism crime, when the reality is every day in Chicago, on average, more than one person is killed. That's just not an acceptable reality, I think, for the majority of American people. And President Trump has endeavored to use the authority that he has to deploy the National Guard to attempt to make that community safer. And you look at what's happening across the country, the conversation about the enemy within. We've seen, this fascism rhetoric, be utilized now at least once by the assassin who shot and killed, Charlie Kirk, believing that, this very mainstream conservative commenter was a fascist. We've seen violence targeted against members of our law enforcement community who are enforcing the immigration laws as they're written by the Congress. I think we really need to tone down the rhetoric and focus on bringing folks together and tackling this crime issue.